Before we begin today's episode, we want to acknowledge that this is a deeply personal story of struggle, recovery, and resilience. The journey we're about to explore touches on themes of mental health, addiction, loss, and redemption. If you or someone you know is struggling with similar challenges, please remember that help is available, and reaching out is a sign of strength, not weakness. Now, let's begin. Welcome to The Examined Life, where we explore the intricate tapestries of human experience through the lenses of philosophy and psychology. I'm Dr. Sarah.
And I'm Dr. James. Today, we're diving into a remarkable story of a man named Matthew. A journey that begins with prodigious talent and spirals through profound adversity, only to emerge as a testament to human resilience.
Matthew's life poses such a powerful question, doesn't it? How do the very traits that define our early successes become the tools we use to navigate our darkest moments? It's a question that touches on fundamental issues in both developmental psychology and existential philosophy.
Exactly. His story is a compelling case study in how the competitive fire of youth can be reforged in the crucible of hardship to become a beacon for recovery and self-discovery. Let's start at the beginning. Matthew learned to read at age 3, was identified as gifted and talented in kindergarten, and from age 5, he was consumed by sports.
But this wasn't just casual play. He was obsessed with being the best and smartest player on the field. He spent countless hours in mental repetitions, studying playbooks, even teaching himself to juggle to improve his hand-eye coordination. From a psychological perspective, this is textbook gifted child behavior. Intense, intrinsic motivation, and what Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi calls flow states. These are moments when a person becomes so absorbed in an activity that time seems to disappear, and the challenge perfectly matches their skill level.
What's fascinating is that this level of intensity in childhood often predicts both exceptional achievement and unique vulnerability. Research on gifted individuals shows they experience what psychologist Kazimierz Dabrowski called overexcitabilities, heightened sensitivities in intellectual, emotional, and sensory domains. Matthew's drive wasn't just about winning. It was about a deep, almost existential need to master himself and his environment.
Right, and philosophically, this early drive is a perfect example of what Nietzsche termed the will to power. Not domination over others, but an innate, life-affirming force pushing toward growth and self-mastery. Matthew's relentless pursuit of excellence was his will to power in its purest form. Nietzsche believed this force was the fundamental driving principle of all life, the desire to grow, to expand, to become more than what we are.
But as we know, the path of the gifted is often fraught with unique challenges. The same intensity that fuels achievement can amplify struggles. For Matthew, the first signs appeared in 8th grade, a B on his report card, shifting interests, and most significantly, the tragic death of his older cousin CJ, someone he deeply looked up to.
That's such a pivotal moment. At just 13 years old, he was carrying his cousin's casket before he even knew what a pallbearer was. Suddenly, life wasn't just a field of competition to be mastered, but a place of inexplicable loss and fragility. This early encounter with mortality is what philosophers call a memento mori moment, a stark reminder of death that fundamentally changes how we view existence.
The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, believed that contemplating death wasn't morbid but liberating. It forces us to confront what truly matters. For Matthew, at such a young age, this wasn't an abstract philosophical exercise. It was visceral reality. The person he wanted to emulate was suddenly gone, and he was left holding the weight of that loss, literally and figuratively.
This turbulence escalated into early adulthood. At age 22, Matthew was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and hospitalized for 2 weeks. But here's what I find so insightful. Matthew himself said, "I knew I wasn't crazy though, I just saw the world in a unique way that was impossible for anyone else to comprehend." This statement reveals such profound self-awareness.
He draws this poignant parallel between the labels given to him. The gifted child and the crazy adult were two sides of the same coin, both attempts to explain his difference from the norm. What appeared as exceptional abilities as a child was viewed as insanity as an adult. This paradox is well documented in the literature. K. Redfield Jamison's work on the connection between creativity, giftedness, and mood disorders shows that the same neurological patterns that produce exceptional insight can also create vulnerability to mental illness.
This is where existentialist philosophy becomes so relevant. Albert Camus speaks of the absurd, the conflict between our human desire for meaning and the silent, seemingly indifferent universe. Matthew was living in the heart of the absurd. His exceptional abilities didn't shield him from trauma, mental health struggles, or repeated loss. In fact, his heightened sensitivity may have made these experiences even more intense.
Camus argued that recognizing the absurd doesn't lead to despair but to freedom. Once we accept that the universe doesn't owe us meaning, we're free to create it ourselves. But that's easier said than done, especially when you're in the depths of suffering. And his journey through depression and substance use can be seen as what Sartre called bad faith, an attempt to escape the overwhelming burden of freedom and the anxiety of forging an identity in a chaotic world.
Sartre believed that we're condemned to be free, that we have radical responsibility for who we become, and that's terrifying. Substance use in this framework becomes a way to numb that terror, to avoid the weight of choice. Matthew faced another devastating loss when his cousin Casey died in a motorcycle accident. Once again, he carried the casket, but this time, something shifted.
Yes, he hadn't been in public for 6 months after a traumatic incident where part of his ear was bitten off in a fight. He was embarrassed, isolated. But Casey's funeral was being broadcast to 3 different churches with over 500 people attending. Matthew found the courage to stand up in front of everyone and speak. He did it for Casey, but it became a turning point in his own healing.
That's a powerful example of what Viktor Frankl called self-transcendence, the idea that we find meaning not by focusing on ourselves, but by dedicating ourselves to something beyond ourselves. Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, argued that even in the most horrific circumstances, we can find meaning through our choices and our commitment to others.
The nadir came in 2016. Poor decisions born from desperation led to an arrest in Oklahoma and the prospect of a 10-year prison sentence. He also lost visitation rights with his daughter, which he describes as the most difficult challenge he faces every day. This loss, perhaps more than any other, represents an ongoing source of pain and a powerful motivation for change.
His future looked hopeless. But here's where the story takes a remarkable turn. Facing the judge, Matthew chose radical honesty. He read letters of contrition, taking full responsibility, offering not excuses but explanation. He spoke about his mental health and the circumstances leading to his arrest. This act of existential authenticity had a real impact. The prosecutor backed down, and he was sentenced to just 120 days, serving only 60.
This is what authenticity looks like in practice. Soren Kierkegaard, often called the father of existentialism, distinguished between living in despair and living authentically. Despair, for Kierkegaard, is refusing to be yourself, either by trying to be someone you're not or by refusing to accept who you are. Matthew's honesty before the judge was an act of accepting himself fully, flaws and all.
And those 60 days became transformative. He attended Bible study every night, used the stillness for deep reflection. In his words, "God truly changed my heart." From a psychological standpoint, this is classic post-traumatic growth, adversity becoming a catalyst for positive change. Psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun identified 5 domains of growth that can emerge from trauma: appreciation of life, relationships with others, new possibilities, personal strength, and spiritual change.
Matthew experienced all 5. The competitive spirit that once drove him to win on the baseball field was now turned inward, fueling determination to overcome his past. The mental discipline from studying playbooks was now applied to scripture and self-reflection. He was practicing Stoic principles, the dichotomy of control, focusing only on what he could influence: his attitude, actions, and character. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who was once a slave, taught that we don't control external events, only our responses to them.
Emerging from jail, Matthew embarked on 7 years of sobriety and rebuilding. He found love, built a family with his wife and her son Mason, found purpose. But the journey wasn't over. A recent struggle with kratom addiction reminded him that the path to self-mastery is continuous, not a final destination. This is such an important point. Recovery isn't a single moment of transformation, but an ongoing practice.
The neuroscience of addiction helps us understand why. Addiction literally rewires the brain's reward circuitry, creating powerful associations and cravings that can persist for years. But neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections, means that recovery is always possible. Every day of sobriety strengthens new pathways and weakens old ones.
Yet once again, he drew upon those foundational traits. He checked into detox in December 2025, started outpatient therapy, began attending meetings, completely changed his daily routine. He's reading, journaling, working out, playing basketball again, writing poetry, rediscovering the activities he loved as a child. This return to childhood passions is psychologically significant. It's a reconnection with his authentic self before trauma and addiction complicated his identity.
And here's where his story comes full circle. Matthew writes, "My competitive spirit has proven to provide a determination to overcome addiction and adversity. These are qualities that have served me well in my life early on as a student and athlete, and later as a provider for my family and an overcomer. The very trait that could have been his downfall, that intense, obsessive drive, became his salvation when properly directed."
The curiosity and love of learning that made him a gifted child are now the tools he uses to navigate sobriety. The drive to be the best is no longer about external validation, but about becoming the best version of himself. This shift from extrinsic to intrinsic motivation is crucial. Research shows that intrinsic motivation, doing something for its own sake, is far more sustainable and fulfilling than chasing external rewards.
Matthew's life embodies the Nietzschean concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. It's an acceptance that every joy, every sorrow, every mistake was a necessary part of the tapestry of his life, shaping who he is today. Nietzsche wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity."
That's not passive resignation, but active embrace. It's saying, I wouldn't change my past, even the painful parts, because they made me who I am. His journey teaches us that our greatest strengths and deepest vulnerabilities are often intertwined. The resilience forged in the fire of youth can become the light that guides us through darkness.
The examined life isn't about perfection. It's about finding meaning in the struggle, continuously striving to grow, to heal, and to embrace the journey. Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." Matthew's life is a testament to the power of self-examination, of looking honestly at ourselves and choosing, again and again, to grow.
His story also reminds us of the importance of support systems. His mother, his sister, who taught him to read, his father, who stayed involved despite the divorce, his attorney, who became a mentor, his wife and stepson, all played crucial roles in his journey. We don't overcome adversity alone.
And perhaps most importantly, Matthew's story isn't over. He's still on the journey, still facing the challenge of being separated from his daughter, still working on his sobriety day by day. But he's doing it with the tools he's developed over a lifetime: curiosity, competitiveness, self-reflection, and an unwavering commitment to growth.
Thank you for joining us on The Examined Life. Matthew's story reminds us that the will to overcome is not about avoiding failure, but about the courage to keep moving forward, to keep examining ourselves, and to keep choosing growth even when it's difficult.
Until next time, keep examining, keep growing, and keep embracing your own journey. Remember, your struggles don't define you, how you respond to them does. Thank you for listening. As we close today's episode, we're reminded that Matthew's journey continues. His story is not one of a destination reached, but of a path being walked with courage and determination. For all of us listening, his life offers profound lessons. That our early gifts can become our greatest tools in times of crisis, that resilience is built through adversity, and that the examined life, the life of honest self-reflection, is indeed worth living. We hope Matthew's story has inspired you to reflect on your own journey, to recognize the strengths you've developed, and to embrace the ongoing process of growth and self-discovery. If this episode resonated with you, We encourage you to share it with someone who might benefit from hearing Matthew's message of hope and perseverance.